In a court ruling U.S. versus Fishbein, a man subjected to potential incineration while wearing another man's suit is entitled to $10,000 worth of airline tickets. It's an obscure ruling, but a very important one. To Thrive Loud with Lou Diamond.
I don't need to teach you to be more like me. I need to teach you to be more like you.
Longtime listener and a huge fan.
Lou, I am tremendous.
And the more I'm plugged from technology and people, the more I can serve people with technology.
What you're standing for with connection, I think it's the key to everything.
You're just an amazing breath of fresh air for sure. You're a diamond in the rough, my man.
Because for me, if I'm not living high energy, I'm surviving and I want to be thriving.
Get ready to thrive loud with Lou Diamond.
I love it.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Thrive Loud with Lou Diamond, connecting you to the most inspiring and amazing people that are thriving each and every day. I'm your host, Lou Diamond. Today on Thrive Loud, we have the founder and chairman of Lindstrom Company, a global branding and culture transformation firm operating across 5 continents and more than 30 countries. Time magazine has named him one of the world's 100 most influential people for 3 years running. Thinkers 50 has selected him to be among the world's top 50 business thinkers. I like this guy already. His new book, The Ministry of Common Sense, comes out this January, 2021. And we're very much looking forward to it because Thrive Loud listeners, we're going to learn how to eliminate bureaucratic red tape, bad excuses, and corporate BS today as I bring you the Martin Lindstrom. Martin, welcome to Thrive Loud. Martin, how are you today?
Thank you, Lou. I'm fantastic and good to connect with you.
Martin, where has common sense gone?
It completely disappeared recently when a word called COVID or Corona came out on this world. Here's the issue. This is crazy. I was catching a flight, and as I boarded the flight, the cabin crew said the following: "Welcome on board, ladies and gentlemen. I'm pleased to announce that all cabin service has been completely suspended." And then she continued and said, "Because of COVID-19. And all passengers looked at each other. They were a little bit sort of confused about why she would say that. And then she continued saying, "And the lavatories in front of the plane are only exclusively reserved for the cabin crew. Only the lavatory in the back is for the passengers because of your safety." Now, there was 169 passengers on board, which now had to walk up and down the aisle, all lining up for this lavatory. And not only that, halfway through the flight, we had to fill out forms. And the first question on the form were, have you been in contact with anyone which have COVID-19, or have you touched with anything which is infectious? Now, no one had a pen because we all have a smartphone. So guess what? The cabin crew lent her pencil and pen, and it was
everyone on board.
Entire plane. Right.
And let alone that you're on an enclosed, large, apparatus in the air in a pressured circulated air system. Yes, I'm amazed by this.
Give me a break, right? What is going on in this world? I mean, common sense is not that common anymore. And I think that's the reason why, Lou, I decided to write this book, because I am just like you, getting sick and tired of all the BS out there.
So let's cover a bunch of this. All right. So at the time we're recording this, which is late November of 2020, here in the United States, Martin, you're coming to us from Switzerland. So we love the cross-Atlantic view here. And for those that are going to see some of the promo videos for him, he has a lovely background set up here. Better than mine, that's for sure. And Martin, at this time, look, the world number of cases have been rising. This is a serious virus that we're, still getting through, yet a vaccine is on its way, very further along. And I do recognize that there are common sense confusion and challenges around the virus, but there's some other common sense things that have been disrupted or across it. So as I understood it, you actually started writing a book earlier, or a book was supposed to come out earlier this year in 2020, and you totally rechanged the way you were doing this. Is that not the case? And really,
yeah.
What is the key message that you want to help solve here? Because I know you are a problem solver, one of the more influential ones around the world. Help us understand how to make sense of this lack of common sense.
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you the backstory, but first of all, I want to say that It's when a simple action like buying office equipment turns into a 6-page people committee, right? Yeah, right. That, and then followed by, let's say, a 5-level approval process. That's where I think that common sense has left the world. Or when you are building up a 264 pages PowerPoint presentation, which is saying, welcome to our Christmas party committee planning process, right? I mean, this is what's going on in our world today. And the reason why I decided to write this book was really because one of the things I'm doing is to create innovation in companies. But I've learned one thing: innovation only happens if people thrive in their job, right? You know everything about this. And it only happens if you don't wear a stretch jacket every day where you can't breathe. And what I realized was happening is that people are spending between 50 to 60% of the time every day on red tape, bureaucracy, and BS. So I had sort of a simple view of this. I need to get rid of this so we can free up people's time and their creativity and really get the work done, right? Yeah. So the backstory, this is crazy stuff. I'll tell you a backstory. Are you open for this? This is crazy.
I'm absolutely. Our listeners are going to love this.
This is amazing. Right. So many years ago, a gentleman, his name was Charlie Bell. He was a former CEO of McDonald's. He reached out to me and he said, Martin, I would love you to redesign the Happy Meal. And I said, wonderful, if I can make it healthy. Now, Charlie Bell was a nice man. He said, absolutely. So I had a vision. My vision was to make 6-year-old kids eat broccoli. I mean, if I'm able to do that, I've succeeded, right?
You'd be the greatest parent of all time.
Yeah, exactly, right? The master parent here. So we created this narrative where the broccoli was the bushes in the forest, the cucumber was the murder weapon, the tomatoes were the blood, and the kids loved it, and the parents loved it, and even the franchisees kind of liked this stuff. So we rolled it out in test markets. It was a huge success. I went to the headquarters of McDonald's outside Chicago, and they said to me, and here comes the magical word, they said, it's interesting. Now, I'm from Europe, and I thought, yeah, they love it. It's interesting. They love it, which really, you know what it kind of means, right?
It's that it's a judgmental word that doesn't mean much because you can't figure out interesting. In what way is it interesting? Yeah. So
what happened here, right? It's like Teflon. It just peels off somehow, right? So I went back. They kept me informed. And after 2 years, the new brave new Happy Meal was launched. And guess what? It was exactly the same Happy Meal as the one we know today, now with an apple. And that's where I realized something is wrong. So over the last decade, if not more, we spend a tremendous amount of time with psychologists to understand what goes on in those companies. What's the issue? And just recently, 3 years ago, this huge bank, one of the largest in the world, top 10, called Standard Chartered Bank, which you wouldn't be that familiar with.
I happen to be. I know them from because I spent time in London, so I'm very familiar with them, and in South Africa. So yeah, I know them well.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, so Standard Chartered Bank reach out. They say, hey, can you guys help to fix our issues? And during one workshop late at night, this lady says to me, I'm sick and tired of all this stuff. And I said to her, so how should we solve it? And she says, listen, why don't we create a ministry of common sense? And we'll literally do that. We start up a department inside this bank with the sole purpose of cleaning up all the BS. And guess what? Within 1 year, it vacuum cleaned up 1,200 rules and regulations. In fact, I interviewed one girl which says to me, I'm responsible for legal aspects. I have to put rules and regulations in place to protect our bank. But she said also, frankly, when I asked her, why is there so many rules which are not relevant anymore? She said, well, listen, I'm measured based on how many are produced, not the ones I'm killing. So she continued producing all these different rules. And guess what? We end up with thousands of rules which are not having any function. So the Ministry of Common Sense exists. It's not just a fantasy. And not only that, it exists in huge companies now around the world, at Maersk, at Swiss, at a range of other companies. And as soon as all the rules and BS and regulations and compliance, all that stuff has been fixed, the Ministry of Common Sense closes down again. And that really became the foundation for my book.
I like it. It's really interesting because I did this recently with a group of sales folks, and this has been the way that I helped a lot of people connect better, and which sometimes means connect faster. And this is actually my question to you in a long way. Sometimes we spend too much time on the BS in certain meetings that aren't necessary, or we'll use a meeting for its wrong purpose. Like there's, just people aren't being efficient within this. So my question to you, in trying to make things more sensible, is part of that making things more time sensible, in the sense of really assessing how much time we spend on it? Because you're right, there are certain processes that one things, but in help is part of the Ministry of Common Sense, an assessment of how long something should take or how long we should spend on something.
Absolutely. Let me give you a couple of tricks. One of the things I realized is that long-term planning is a waste of time. I know it sounds crazy, but here's the reality. An average CEO only stays in the job for around 5 years. An average employee for perhaps 2.5 years. When the CEO goes up and talk about our 10-year plan, people fundamentally couldn't care less, because I have 679 emails in my inbox today. And I can hardly, handle tomorrow, right? So one of the things we've learned through our processes is to break things down. And let me tell you a story, Lou, which I think you'll like. A couple of years ago, an experiment was done with chickens. They're put into a cage, stocked into the cage for half a year. And one day they were let out on the beautiful green grass. The sun was shining and the birds were singing. And guess what happened?
What happened?
They went straight out and straight back in again after 30 seconds. And I call that the chicken cage syndrome. And the reality is that all of us more or less are sitting in chicken cages. So how do you get a chicken out of the cage? Now, we spend a lot of time on that. And here's the issue. If I place a piece of corn too far away from the cage, and let's say there's other chicken cages as well around in a big circle, well, the first thing I'll do is to look at the corn. My God, that's far away. And the second thing I'll do is to look at my colleagues, i.e. the other chicken cages. And they'll look at me, I'll look at you, look at me, I'll look at them. And guess what? I'll go straight back in again, concluding that's too far away. No one want to go there. Translated into the reality, it is this new innovative project. Do you know what? It may make sense. For example, like McDonald's, why don't we have a happy, healthy meal, right? But the reality is my KPIs are measured around what I did in the past, not some unknown experiment where no one really knows what they're responsible for. So what we've learned is to place the corn straight outside the chicken cage. Why? Because if I take that, and then, this is super important, I celebrate it. I celebrate it so much, so loud and clear that the whole organization will say, my gosh, that really was successful. Look at this person now doing this. Then everyone steps up. Then we take another corn and another corn. And I think this is the key issue in organizations. We do not celebrate success. Yeah, we celebrate that the shareholders are happy once a year. But how much do you celebrate internal success? And in particular, as we all stuck behind the screens, we need it even more, because the only thing I can produce today is back-to-back Zoom calls and Excel spreadsheets and PowerPoint presentations. That's my home factory, right? So I think we need to change the way we work. And I fundamentally believe COVID-19 is, for whatever it is, horrible as it is, also kind of a wake-up call and an opportunity to fundamentally change the way, not the way we go back to work, but the way we go forward to work, because I think we have to change our behavior.
I think you're spot on this. I think it's really interesting. We're doing a special at this time of year, Thanksgiving episode here. And with everything that 2020 has brought to people, we've recognized you can spend a lot of time complaining about whatever has been bad or the good, the things that are there, but there are a lot of things that we should be thankful for. And you're right. There's a lot of incredibly expedited learnings that are coming out of having a global pandemic and changing the way we work. And I think what it does do is, when hopefully things start getting much better health-wise and we're able to be more connected together, which is something we do miss. But we'll be able to take the benefits of this and say, okay, what makes sense going forward? Like, it might not make sense to do things the way we did things before versus what we can go moving forward. And I do like the way you're thinking that. But I do want to ask a question. It is hard to make a 10-year plan. We agree with that, to go that far in advance. How should we be thinking sensibly in planning? Because we do have to plan a little bit moving forward, right? And what our directions to be. So Martin, how do you recommend and consult with people on giving them what's the right level of moving forward that makes sense for the business today?
It's a very good question. And it really depends on where you are and what the size of your company is, where you are in terms of transformation and adapting to reality. I'll give you an example. Many years ago, I was asked by Lego, the toy company, to find out what the future would look like. In fact, they gave me a strategy which were issued back in 1994. That was the year the World Wide Web was invented. And they asked me to finalize the strategy. And in my strategy, I said to them, hey guys, I think we, just for fun, should quit the plastic altogether. No more plastic. And I know this is very controversial because Lego is all about plastic, right? But here's the reality. There's two realities coming in. First, we have something called the internet. Remember, this is the first day of the World Wide Web coming out. And that will fundamentally change the way we behave with interactivity. The second thing is probably plastic in the future will be a huge polluting factor in our reality. So we need to find a solution around that. So why don't we try to simulate a world without plastic and then build the company around it? Now, I'm not saying we should skip everything we know today, but what I'm saying is we should simulate that just as you simulate a crash when you are on a plane for a new certificate as a pilot. You simulate it because then you know what's going to happen and what to do. So what I'm saying to you is I would have two tracks. I'll have one track where you do simulations. And one simulation may be, as I actually said to a team yesterday, one of the largest food distribution companies in the country. I said to them, let's assume there is no more wraps in the future. Let's assume that everything is happening behind a screen. And I want to add, as sad as it sounds, okay? Seriously sad, but let's assume, sadly, that COVID-19 will become COVID-21 soon. So how are we going to behave differently? And once we've done that exercise, then we can go back to the reactive move. And that's what we're going to say, what are the things we have to change on a day-to-day basis to have that in mind, but break it down to 90-day interventions. And 90-day interventions is something you do within 3 months. And then once you've done it, you celebrate it. And you see the success of it. And then you have an acceptance in the organization. So I would not work against a plan which says, let's have no wraps on the road, or let's not have plastic ever as a 10-year plan. I would rather say that is our vision, okay? We need to break it down to small bite-sized success stories and then celebrate the hell out of it every 3rd month.
I like that. It's really interesting too, because I happen to know people also at Lego, people who work actually at Dell Computer and even in the financial firm Lazard. Those are 3 privately held companies. And one of the interesting challenges when you remain private versus going public and having to report to shareholders and spend all that wasted time compiling things for all the reporting alliances, while you still need to track certain things, that wasted time, effort, and nonsensical bit of doing stuff takes away from a lot of communication, productivity, and creativity because they're very structured in delivering that. And I know that that has always been one of the bigger challenges of big companies. And I think that comes in there because there's certain things that they have to do because of financial requirements, regulatory requirements, legal requirements that take up so much of that. I guess my question to you, before we shift a little more to get behind the curtain of Martin, is there a way with that bureaucratic component to kind of help people recognize how important putting in common sense is? Because with all the other BS that's behind it, because there is a lot of stuff that has to get done administratively. How do we not make the administrative part and affect the regular business stuff we do every day? Because that does happen. And that is part of the problem, I believe. I'd love to hear your 2 cents.
Lou, absolutely. And I'm going to tell you something which for me was very surprising as we began these experiments. I fundamentally believe that if you set up a ministry or you do similar activities, that you can make that become break even. So here's how we do it. Toyota, the largest, if not the second largest car manufacturer in the world, reached out to us some years ago and they said, hey, we are all about the environment. We created this car, which is now going on part electricity, part fuel. And we want to go further down that track. But we have a problem. We consume an enormous amount of power and there's no common sense in this. So how do we solve it? So here's what we did. We did an internal competition in the company. And half through the competition, one guy come up with this brilliant idea. He says, do you want to save money on electricity? Let's switch off all light in all our factories. Now, let's just pause here for a second. That seems pretty stupid, right? I mean,
let's work in the dark. I love it.
Yeah, but that's not the case because there is no people in those factories. It's all robots.
Right.
So they switched off all the power and all the plants and they saved millions of dollars a year, first year. Half of the amount they gave back to the department, which actually had to change their behavior to make it happen. And half of the amount was donated to another initiative within the organization as part of the ministry, changing another aspect of the organization. Here's the reality. You can actually save money from doing it. I'll give you another example. A huge bank in Asia reached out to us. They said, hey, we have such a big on productivity issue right now because IT is a bottleneck. We are constantly held back because of IT. People are waiting for hours and hours to have that little cable or that little monitor or whatever it is. What do? We started up the Ministry of Common Sense. And one of the ideas was very simple. Why don't we set up a vending machine? And the vending machine contains all the different things you need for your computer. You have the cable, you have this, and you have that, and you have the mouse or whatever. And we basically had the vending machine. And then we basically had a queuing system as well. And we established that the first week. And people lined up to buy stuff in the vending machine, and they had points they could do it with. Within 3 weeks, all complaints were gone. Because what happened was that people were waiting for something to be repaired, which couldn't be repaired anyway. There's no common sense in that. So the fact that they could just fix the problems themselves was much easier. And that is the message for all this stuff. Time after time, we realized that probably around 8 out of 10 cases can be solved by the organization themselves. There's someone in that organization which actually have a solution. The problem is that person is not sitting in that department, or the person is not paid to go in and help. So what we do is we break down the way of motivating people by giving people bonuses based on what you save by changing and reintroducing common sense in the organization. And I have to tell you, time after time, we see that the NPS, the Net Promoter Score, so the customer satisfaction goes through the roof, and so does the ENPS, the Employee Net Promoter, because people suddenly feel they can breathe again, right?
Yeah, I love it. Taking the straitjacket off. Martin, let's do this right now. I love asking this question of my guests, and I'm very curious to see where this goes. You've been thriving in business for a very long time, very well recognized. So many people look up to you, and obviously written all these amazing books and great messages and things. So you're thriving on most days, Martin, but we all have days when we're not quite kicking on all cylinders. On those days when you're not thriving, Martin, what practice do you seek or individual do you seek out to get yourself back on the thriving track?
It's very simple. I go out and swim. You see, okay. I have something I call the water moment. I realized that all my books basically I've written when I'm swimming in the pool. I have a pen or a pad.
Makes it very difficult. You're getting everything wet.
It is super difficult. I'm not kidding. You should see me when I'm writing my book. I have all these half-wet papers, hanging them in my hotel room. Right? It's crazy, right? But yeah, I actually go and swim. I have a pad in each of the end of the pool. I do my notes. And here's what I call it. I call it the water moment. And what I realized is we all have a water moment, whether that's when you're running, some people when they sit in the car. The issue is with technology today, that we rarely have time for ourselves. And the smartphone is one of the key reasons why. As soon as we have 2 minutes for ourselves, sitting in a car from destination A to B or whatever, we grab our phone and do anything with the phone, either because we don't want to look like we're a loser when we're waiting for someone and they're not showing up, or because we are petrified of silence. Yeah. So I skipped my phone 3 years ago, and I had never had the phone since. Wow. I have a wooden phone. It's just in wood. It's an amazing phone. It has an iFloat device built into it. This phone is in wood. It has the highest resolution of wood you ever will see, and it has what's called a family-friendly button on it. So this piece of wood is my phone, and what has happened because of that is I'm actually more happy. I'm substantially more productive. But here's the most important thing, Lou. When you have a phone, you never get bored. And boredom is the foundation for creativity. Is that pause which enables you to connect dots in a new way, to reflect and see things you normally wouldn't see, because suddenly you don't have a screen in front of your eyes. So the phone has helped me, getting rid of it has helped me to actually have very few of those down times.
That's spectacular. The listeners need to know he literally has a wooden phone that, for the viewers who could see this, that actually resembles the size of a regular smartphone. Very, very cool. All right. So Martin, let's do this for the listeners and for the viewers here. Share with everyone where people can find you, websites, social media, stuff like that. We know we can't send you a text message because you're not going to pick it up over the 3 years, but the best ways that people can find you and where they can get the book. And we'll put it all in the show notes so that those that are in front of screens can actually connect to you and possibly get a little bit lost and use that boredom for their own advantage. So where can they connect?
Fantastic. Well, listen, if you want to learn more about me, you just go to martinlindstrom.com, Lindstrom.com. And here there's a link to the new book, which you also can find on Amazon and everywhere else, The Ministry of Common Sense. And of course, you can find me on Twitter. It's hashtag Martin Lindstrom, on Facebook, hashtag Martin Lindstrom. So that's straightforward to find me out there. And by the way, I also want to encourage everyone to do me a favor. If you're up for it, if you go into my website, there is a whole section where you can submit your most crazy thing ever. And the stories in there are so ridiculous that I had to just laugh, because what's going on in the corporate world today is one big joke, I have to tell you.
I'm gonna make sure that I get to that, and I'm gonna put in a story that happened recently to me, which we won't share on the air here, and maybe you'll have a chance to check it out. But because there's been insanity and ridiculousness at that. Martin, permission to go down Fun Street with you here. A fun little conversation to shift.
I thought this conversation was fun. You thought it was boring. What are you saying?
I think everything we have done so far is fun, but this specifically is what are fun things to you that are a little bit off from the workspace. So yes, I know it's fun. Our listeners would like to hear this. So first of all, are you a movie fan?
I love movies.
Do you have a favorite movie that you like more than any others? That's one of your go-tos when you think of it.
Well, listen, I want to come across as being sophisticated, but if I say it's James Bond, it's kind of tacky, right? So
absolutely not. I want to know what connects in favor with you. There's nothing wrong with that. We want the authentic Martin.
I was convinced I wanted to be the new James Bond when I was a kid. I was so full on this one here. Sadly, they never picked me, but I'm still a fan of James Bond.
Was there one particular Bond movie that you like more than another?
Yeah, We Only Live Twice. I love that. Okay. For You, Eyes Only is good as well. Moonraker is fantastic. I'm a Roger Moore fan. I know there's a lot of people who are not Roger Moore. They're more Sean Connery, or perhaps the latest and greatest. But yeah, that's where I live.
Okay. So now what I'm going to do right now, this is kind of like a speed round. Let's see how good you are with this. I'm going to say something to you, and the first thing that comes to your mind that lifts you up, makes you feel good, or that brings joy to you. Ready? Ready for this? Is what we call the speed round of Fun Street. A song that you love to hear that lifts you up and makes you feel good.
Okay, Upside Down.
Favorite food that's not a dessert?
It's definitely sashimi.
A favorite dessert?
Oh, dessert. That is Bomb Surprise, which, by the way, was also featured in Moonraker in the James Bond movie.
That's right. That's very true. An activity you wish you did more of?
It definitely would be eating more unhealthy.
An activity you wish you did less of?
It definitely would be to not sit in front of a screen as much as I do and as you do every day.
Martin, if you could snap your fingers and go anywhere in the world, where are you?
I'm in Tokyo straight away.
Excellent. Martin Lindstrom, truly a pleasure to have you here on Thrive Loud. Great insights. Common sense. I'm all up. The Ministry of Common Sense. I think every organization would think about putting it in, but they should all check out the book, and we'll make sure we put all the links to do that. Thank you so much for coming on Thrive Loud. Truly an honor and a pleasure to connect with you today.
Thank you.
And to all our listeners and viewers out there, thank you for joining us. And until next time, keep thriving onward and upward. And remember, be brief, be bright, be gone.
You've been listening to Thrive Loud with your host, Lou Diamond. Check us out on the web at thriveloud.com and follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook at Thrive Loud. And check us out on the Good Pods app at Thrive Loud, where you can follow, listen, and connect directly to Lou and all of the Thrive Loud episodes. Thanks for listening.